Why does it always come back to this question? Whose fault is it? For example, you're practicing social distancing by staying at home when a neighbor phones to tell you that a person on your street has a confirmed case of COVID-19. The general feeling of panic in the air, the stresses of having enough supplies, the constant and ever-changing news of the global pandemic, it's all getting to be too much to handle. You and your neighbor begin to ask the questions. Did he travel where he shouldn't have? Did he not practice social distancing? Did he not wash his hands properly? And there is that question again, whose fault is it that my neighbor has COVID-19? Maybe it's human instinct to find fault. Maybe it's a coping mechanism to keep the great void at bay. If we know whose fault it is, at least we have a way to understand what's happened. At least we have a way to explain our part in it, and even better, we may find a way to excuse our part in it, which is to say, to put the responsibility squarely on somebody else's shoulders. If our only job is to find out whose fault it is, we can be assured that someone else will pay for what goes wrong. Do you see this kind of thing happening where you are? When the basement floods, when a new church program falls flat, when the neighbor is diagnosed with COVID-19? Why are we so quick to ask, whose fault is it? And when we determine whose fault it was, why does the fault finding so quickly turn to blaming? I'm not sure that the disciples are looking to lay blame in this scene. They aren't out for blood or retribution. I think they're just curious. They really want to know who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind. It's a fair question for the disciples to ask of their teacher, given the theological equations of the day, which were that blindness equals sickness equals sin equals human fault. It's a fair question for Jesus' disciples to ask, given the fact that Jesus keeps turning the theological tables. I think the disciples are really open to a new and different answer here, a new possibility, something that might be a new way to look at things. They really want Jesus to teach them. So who sinned Jesus, this individual, or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus' answer stumps everyone. No one sinned. He was born blind so that God's works may be revealed in him. No blame, no fault, just an opportunity for God to be seen and known. Jesus teaches them a third way. Jesus teaches a different way to look at things. Who sinned, this one or the parents? No one sinned. No one is the cause of this. No one is the subject here except God and what God might do in this situation. For me, this changes everything. Whose fault is it that our neighbor has been diagnosed with COVID-19? No one's fault. No one is the subject here except God and what God might do in this situation. So look around. What do you think, or what do you see God doing? And how can we help? Most of us generally reject the idea that illness and misfortune are simply the wages of sin. But there is something in all of us that is nevertheless attracted to the notion. Part of us longs for a clear causal connection between what I do and what happens to me, simply because it implies that I can closely control my fortune with my behavior. If bad things happen to those bad people, I can avoid them by being good. Jesus denies the causal connection, but he does affirm that the individual's blindness has meaning. The works of God will be revealed in him. Now, I have to say that I have a real problem with this reading, and that is its assumptions about who is in need of healing or who has something wrong with them. I think that whenever we judge another person as flawed or wrong because of who they are the ones who are in need of healing. This individual is a beloved child of God, who is loved by God just the way they are. Fortunately, Jesus teaches a different way to look at things. Asking whose fault it is or why something difficult has come into our lives, well, that usually leads us nowhere. Asking how one might find a way through the pain or difficulty to a strong and vibrant life in spite of it all, now that is a question with answers. Jesus uses the word we in this reading. We must work the works of God who sent him. So we are invited to be God's companions in helping. Mr. Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" In this time of upheaval in our lives, we can still help. We can find a Christ-like way to look at things. We can still do ordinary things with great love, like picking up groceries for our neighbor or connecting with someone we know is alone. In these ways, we claim our vocation as followers of Jesus, and we embody a different way to look at things. Praise and thanks be to God. Amen.